Hello, clever people, and welcome to my review for Hereditary. So Hereditary is directed by first-time director Ari Aster, and it comes to us from the production studio A24, and it stars Toni Collette and Alex Wolff, and it follows the story of a woman who has to deal with her mother's death, basically, and the spirits in her mother's life that are left behind. It's really hard to explain what this movie is, the plot-wise, because the trailers were extremely vague, the plot synopsis is extremely vague, and what this movie is actually about is not really told until about, halfway through the film. So you can't really say what this movie is about. What I'll just say is that it's about family conflict, and it's about drama and issues with one another, and there is a supernatural aspect to it that is added in a little bit later. So Hereditary is a movie that I've been looking forward to for the longest time, ever since it came out of Sundance, I think it was, and it got rave reviews. People were saying that it was one of the scariest films ever. Apparently people were crying at the premiere because they were so terrified by it, and I was just looking forward to it because it's A24, of course, and I really do love horror when it is done well. And around this time last year, we had It Comes at Night come out, which wasn't really a horror movie, but that was a really great, bleak, dark, atmospheric movie. And I was expecting that we would get something else that was also extremely atmospheric out of Hereditary, and thankfully, that is exactly what we got. Honestly, I find this movie kind of hard to review and kind of hard to score, because I've only seen it once, and I did want to try to see it a second time before I reviewed it, but I couldn't get around to it, and I do want to try to check this out a second or even a third time before I fully make my opinion. But I do think that Hereditary succeeds on being a really atmospheric and really creepy horror movie. There's a lot of great horror in this movie, whether it be based off of violence or based off of purely being disturbing. It's a great blend of art house horror and the type of horror that just normal audience members like. It is really well constructed. It's got a really good rhythm to it as it goes on and on and on. It progressively gets creepier and creepier through event and event, and you start off really with what is a drama. It's just a drama about family life, I guess, that gets worse and worse as the events for the characters get worse and worse, and eventually it does become a horror movie, but really it starts off with just being the horror of living in a family and the horror of loss and the type of fear that you can get just off of, or the hatred that you can get from living when you lose somebody that you love. And it's really haunting and really well done stuff, and I do applaud everybody involved for making this movie as atmospheric as it is. And of course, Toni Collette is amazing in it. She definitely deserves an Oscar nomination. A lot of people have been talking about her. I don't know if this movie will really have the lasting impacts until December for her to really be considered for the Oscar, but I think that she does deserve it. She gives a career best performance in this, and she is a really great actress, and it shows here. And Alex Wolff is also really great in this movie. This movie did require a lot from its actors. It was asking for primal cries. It was asking for a lot of, serious drama in it, a lot of crying, a lot of screaming, a lot of terror, genuine terror. And it's really, I don't know, I would have a hard time acting in this movie. It seemed terrible for the actors because they had to pull on so much from themselves. But they all pulled it off really well because the primal cries, each one is just heartbreaking. And the whole movie really is just one giant heartbreak that really does stick with you. But my biggest issue with Hereditary is the fact that it doesn't really feel all that creative. I know that may sound weird because A24 is basically the studio of creativity, and people have even praised the movie for being really creative and inventive, but personally I felt like this wasn't anything that we hadn't seen before. And it really just felt similar to movies like Rosemary's Baby or other movies like that with creepy atmospheres that don't really seem like horror movies at first, but slowly become more and more horrific as they go on. It really just seemed like a lot of movies like that, and it didn't seem like the movie was intentionally going out of its way to do anything particularly creative. It was just going off of a lot of the tropes of a lot of these type of movies. And that was a disappointment because I thought Hereditary was going to be one of the most creative movies of the year, and I thought it was going to do something completely new with the horror genre, but unfortunately it didn't really get close to doing anything new. It was just really the same stuff. I mean, what you do get out of this movie is some really good reactions to the horror in the movie. The characters, when certain bad things happen, I can't really say because it's a spoiler, but towards the beginning of the movie, when certain bad things happen, the actors' reactions to it are really genuine. They're completely believable, and I really do applaud them for that. So overall, Hereditary is a really well done movie. It's horrific, and it's terrifying, and it's extremely atmospheric throughout. And even though it is cliched, and it does follow a lot of the tropes of horror movies, that doesn't really bring it to the point that I didn't like the movie. I think that it isn't amazing. I don't think it's perfect like a lot of people have been saying, and I don't really think it's as scary as a lot of people have been saying. It didn't have really as long of a lasting impact as I wish it did, but you still did get a really well constructed movie out of this that I think that, you know, as Ari Aster continues to make movies and he continues to, you know, get higher budgets or maybe continues on more creative endeavors, I think that we may get a masterpiece or two out of him. I will give Hereditary an 8 out of 10. I'm not really sure on that. I feel like it's between a 7.5 and an 8. Really, it's kind of in the middle. I can't really find a place for it. It's somewhere in there, but scores don't really matter. What matters is my review. So that concludes my review for Hereditary. So what are your thoughts on this film, or what do you think of Toni Collette's performance? Comment in the comment section below and let me know. I'm Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.